Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett and these are the top stories this hour. Centre-right Maltese lawmaker Robert Metsola is chosen as only the third woman to head the European Parliament. Eleven people are killed in a Saudi-led coalition airstrike on Yemen's rebel-held capital Sana'a after the insurgents launched a rare and deadly attack on the United Arab Emirates. Russian troops begin arriving in Belarus for military drills announced against the backdrop of tensions between the West and Russia over neighbouring Ukraine. The British Prime Minister's former aide, Dominic Cummings, accuses Boris Johnson of lying to Parliament about a Downing Street party in May 2020. High waves after the eruption of an undersea volcano in Tonga caused an oil spill on the Peruvian coast, as claims to control the spill within hours. A major winter storm blankets a swathe of North America, with snow stretching up the east coast from Georgia to Canada, disrupting travel and cutting power to thousands of homes. Britain's Prime Minister stands accused today of lying to Parliament. Boris Johnson's former special advisor Dominic Cummings has set out new claims in a blog about a gathering at Downing Street on May the 20th, 2020. Last week, the Prime Minister apologised to Parliament for attending a so-called Bring Your Own Booze event at Downing Street, which he said he thought was work rather than socialising. This is what he said to MPs in the House of Commons last week.
There is a particular Number 10 is a big department with the garden as an extension of the office, which has been in constant use because of the role of fresh air in stopping the virus. And when I went into that garden just after 6 on the 20th of May 2020 to thank groups of staff before going back into my office 25 minutes later to continue working, I believed implicitly that this was a work event.
Well, now Dominic Cummings says he's ready to swear under oath that the Prime Minister is lying and claims Boris Johnson was warned about the event being a lockdown rule-breaking party. Cummings has also shared a screenshot of the email invitation to the May 20th event from Boris Johnson's aide Martin Reynolds. This is the infamous email previously leaked, which asks attendees to bring their own booze. Cummings claims Reynolds was asked to cancel the invitation by at least 2 people, but that Boris Johnson waved concerns aside. This would appear to contradict Boris Johnson's explanations to Parliament last week and opens him up to claims he misled the Commons. Senior civil servant Sue Gray is running an independent investigation into a series of claimed rule-breaking parties in and around Downing Street over the last 2 years. Number 10 had been hoping her inquiry would conclude this week, but with the various new claims coming to light in recent days, it could slip to next week or even beyond. And our correspondent Giles Gibson is joining us live now from London. And Giles, how serious a charge is it for Boris Johnson, that claim that he lied to Parliament?
Well, Ollie, this is a very serious allegation from somebody who, of course, was once very close to you. Cummings saying in this blog post that he personally told the Prime Minister that would be a mistake to hold a party on that day back in 2020, also claiming that he spoke to the Prime Minister's principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, raising his concerns about this event. As we just heard in that clip just a couple of minutes ago, of course, Boris Johnson speaking to members of Parliament last week, he claimed that he was under the impression that this was a work event that he was attending, and he also said that he only stayed for around 25 minutes before going back to work. Over the last few hours, we've been hearing from Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary. He has said, crucially, that it would normally be a resigning matter lying to Parliament under the Ministerial Code, which is this code of conduct which governs how top ministers here in the UK and their behaviour. However, crucially, we've also heard from Dominic Raab in the last couple of hours that these claims from Dominic Cummings are, as he put it, nonsense.
And Giles, when Sue Gray does eventually report her findings, what can we expect to happen next?
Well, Sue Gray is this very senior civil servant. She's been described by some as the most powerful person in the UK that you've never heard of. She is, of course, working on this investigation into allegations of different parties held on different dates over the course of the coronavirus pandemic. It is not clear exactly when she is going to complete her investigation and file her report, but certainly, Ollie, we are expecting it to wrap up in the matter of weeks instead of a matter of months. She crucially does not have the power to sanction anybody, including the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, once she completes her investigation. But at the moment, we already have Conservative MPs such as backbencher Andrew Bridgen calling for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to resign in the wake of this scandal. And if Sue Gray's findings are explosive, if they are particularly damning for Boris Johnson, if there are perhaps some new revelations that come out of her investigation, then, Ollie, we could see more Conservative MPs just being tipped over the edge, just not being able to back Boris Johnson anymore, and also calling for him to resign. So this is a very dangerous couple of weeks for UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his political future.
OK, Giles, thank you. Saudi Arabia has launched retaliatory strikes on Yemen after a drone attack in Abu Dhabi. The drone strike came from Yemen's Houthi rebels. They set off explosions in fuel trucks near the airport. 3 people were killed and 6 others injured in the attack. 2 Indian nationals were among those who died. The Indian embassy in Abu Dhabi tweeted that the victims have been identified and officials are in touch with their family members. The UAE's foreign minister has condemned the attack and threatened retaliation against Yemen's Houthi rebels. The Saudi-led coalition fighting in Yemen has launched airstrikes on the capital city Sana'a. These strikes killed around 20 people. According to residents of the city, one of the airstrikes killed around 14 people in one single building. The coalition has also intercepted 8 drones launched towards Saudi Arabia. Earlier, the Houthi rebels warned civilians and foreign firms to stay away from vital installations in the UAE. An advisor to the president of the Houthi Political Council, Abdul Ilah Hajjar, said that the military operation in Abu Dhabi was a warning shot, and that if the UAE continues hostility to Yemen in future, it won't be able to withstand the strikes that would follow.
سبق وأن وجهنا رسائل إنذار للإمارات بأنها إذا لم تتوقف عن دعمها لمرتزقة طارق عفاش والذين يحشدون في مأرب وفي البيضاء وفي شبوة فسيكون لنا رد. الآن يبدو أن الإمارات لم تفهم هذه الرسالة التحذيرية، فأرسلنا إليهم رسالة تنبيه واضحة بضرب أماكن ليست بالاستراتيجية كبيرة، ولكنها تنبيه إذا استمرت الإمارات في عدائها لليمن فلن تستطيع في المستقبل أن تتحمل الضربات الموجعة.
The United Kingdom is promising full support to US investigators on the Texas synagogue incident over the weekend. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's spokesman called it a terrible and anti-Semitic act of terrorism. Meanwhile, the UK's counter-terror police have detained 2 teenagers in connection with the 10-hour siege that took place in the small Texan town of Colleyville. The Muslim Council of Britain has condemned the attack, calling it completely unacceptable. The Council's Secretary-General Zahra Mohammed has released a statement which describes the incident as all the more reprehensible since it was instigated at a place of worship where Jews were targeted. She describes it as a hate crime and an act of anti-Semitism and says we must remain united against such hatred. Well, our correspondent Susan Tarani has sent us this update.
As FBI agents landed in the UK to work with British police, pressure continues to mount on security services amid concerns on how that British Islamist who staged a siege at the synagogue in Texas holding hostages on Saturday was able to enter JFK Airport here in New York and come to the United States despite his significant criminal record and radical views. Fresh questions are now being asked after reports that that individual was on the radar of MI5 as police in the US and the UK scramble to find out whether or not he was part of a larger terror cell. At least one UK MP is raising concerns about, quote, a failure of intelligence sharing between the UK and the United States. The 44-year-old was shot dead by law enforcement after taking hostages at the Congregation Beth Israel Synagogue in Texas. U.S. President Joe Biden has called the incident an act of terror. An investigation is still ongoing. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
3 days now after a massive volcanic blast, the Pacific island of Tonga continues to remain cut off from the rest of the world. Some of the first aerial images are emerging now from the island that show the scale of the devastation. According to aid agencies, Tonga's small outer islands have suffered extensive damage. Some images from New Zealand's reconnaissance flights show an entire village destroyed on Mango Island and numerous buildings missing on nearby Atata Island. Tonga's capital also faced significant damage, with houses, roads and port facilities completely covered in dust and ash. Tonga is virtually unreachable for now after the critical undersea cable connecting the Pacific Islands to the outside world was severed. According to officials, it may take weeks to secure Tonga's phone and internet lines completely. Authorities have confirmed 2 deaths from the Tonga volcano eruption. The body of a British woman who was swept away by a tsunami has been found. Angela Glover, who ran a dog charity in the South Pacific nation, had been missing after she was washed away from the beach when waves slammed into the coasts. The death toll is likely to rise in the coming days.
Earlier today, my family was sadly informed that the body of my sister Angela has been found. Angela, who is 50, had been living with her husband James in Tonga since getting married. During their time in Tonga, they have become well loved by both locals and expats alike.
A distress signal has been detected in a low-lying Tongan island following the volcanic eruption and tsunami. A UN agency is expressing concern for 2 islands in particular, Mango and Fonoi, after surveillance flights confirmed substantial damage in the region. The eruption was so powerful it was recorded around the world. Away is Alaska. Both Australia and New Zealand to get a sense of the damage from the air. Both have put C-130 military transport aircraft on standby to drop emergency supplies as well. The Royal Australian Navy has dispatched a ship to assist the people affected in the region. The Royal New Zealand Navy is also sending a ship to help Tonga with necessary supplies. China is ordering its workers to disinfect international deliveries and is urging citizens to reduce what they're ordering from overseas. This after authorities claim that postal mail could be the source of recent COVID outbreaks. China says the first Omicron case in Beijing may have come from international mail delivered from Canada via the US and Hong Kong. The document from Canada was found to contain similar strains to those in North America and Singapore. The woman infected is thought to have had no contact with other infected people. China has so far maintained a strict policy of targeting zero COVID cases, even as the rest of the world reopens. But the country is battling multiple small outbreaks now, this as the capital prepares to host the Winter Olympics. China announced yesterday that tickets to the Beijing Winter Games will not be sold to the general public, but distributed instead to targeted groups. Overseas spectators will not be allowed to enter the country. The Games are slated to start on the 4th of February. China Post has ordered workers to disinfect all packages from outside the country, and it says those handling foreign packages will receive booster vaccine shots. Well, both the World Health Organization and the US Centers for Disease Control say the chances of being infected from contaminated surfaces such as post is low and becomes less likely as time passes. But China is not taking any chances. Cases of anxiety and depression saw a worldwide increase of 28% in 2020 during the pandemic to an estimated 246 million cases. These are findings from a survey by The Lancet using data from North America, Europe and East Asia. The study found women were more affected than men. More now from our broadcast partner, Voice of America.
Anxiety and depression are up in the age of COVID. A Lancet survey estimates the number of people worldwide suffering from a major depressive disorder rose by 28% in 2020. Those with anxiety disorders worldwide increased by 26%. The effects of lockdowns, school and business closures, and the spread of the virus in general are among the factors blamed for the rise, say researchers.
So that was a good thing, wasn't it?
Margaret Sullivan, who is 87, has been stuck at home caring for her 92-year-old husband.
There are days when I'm really sad, but I don't know whether it's the COVID that makes me sad or the other things going on that were going on anyway. For us, when you know you don't have that many years left, it's a lost year.
The elderly can be especially at risk for both isolation and faring poorly if they catch the virus. But mental health experts say they are hearing from young people the most. During the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, an estimated 1 in 4 youths globally experienced clinically elevated depression symptoms, while 1 in 5 young people experienced higher anxiety, according to JAMA Pediatrics. Dr. Beth Salcedo heads the Ross Center for Anxiety and Depression in Washington, D.C.
I think in this country, certainly stigma has really changed in the last 20 years, and certainly with our younger population, they're talking about anxiety and depression a lot, whereas people, in my generation and older didn't talk about it so much.
22-year-old Eva Zarpes had her college studies go virtual during COVID-19. She says the isolation has heightened the anxiety and depression she already felt.
Being unable to connect with large groups of people in the way that, humans are used to. It was really hard just to wake up, being asleep was my favorite thing about the day because I didn't have to be awake and be thinking and wanting to be with people but not being able to.
Her 14-year-old sister Stella suffered too.
It's important for kids to always be around each other, just that sheer isolation, which really made it difficult to kind of cope with all the other things when you're not getting just basic needs met by talking to other people.
Experts say it will take time for the mental health effects of COVID-19 to pass.
people have lost a lot in this last year and a half. It'll be 2 years, and they're going to have to put their lives back together. And I think it's going to take a while. And I think the ramifications from an emotional point of view are going to take a long time to fully recover.
Demand for treatment for anxiety disorders has increased since the start of the pandemic, according to the American Psychological Association. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
And finally, going back to the Winter Olympics in China, as we were hearing, tickets are only being distributed to targeted groups of people. Organisers cite the severe and complex COVID-19 situation and the need to protect the safety of the Winter Games. But the venues are ready and cities have been lit up. So we will sign off today's show with a look at some of the Winter Olympic venues. Thanks for watching.
This is right, Arab.